Welcome to Activate Your Life. I am your host, Erin Esser, and I believe that life isn't a battleground. It's a playground of possibility where self-sabotage is transmuted into self-mastery. On this show, I share tools such as human design, astrology, inner child, and shadow work that help you disrupt your unconscious programming so that you can begin to experience the life that you desire. Don't forget to like, share, and hit the subscribe button to receive valuable information each week that will change your life. Thank you for joining me and welcome to the show. Yeah, Gemini, just like the highest, like it's like being able to see above the right, wrong, the left, the right, the, up and down, all of those things to this highest level, to be able to see that that's what's going on. I think that we're in, think the shadow of Gemini is being in one side, but not being able to see outside of that side, and
right.
So to be able to see it all is go, oh, I'm seeing all these sides, but I'm not attaching myself to one or the other and realizing that that is the fucking program,
Yeah, totally. Well, I think a lot of these issues that, are amidst today, right, is I'm going to bring up a whole bunch of really polarizing issues. Well, there's the first one that started kind of either last year. Yeah, last year, I think, was Jeffrey Epstein, killed himself or he was murdered, and how there's this polarization when I think there is a lot of whatever the two binary perspectives are, chances are it's not either of those things.
Exactly.
So, that's kind of how I feel. There is no virus, or it's the worst thing that we've ever seen,
Yes.
And it's neither of those from my perspective, right? And there's also Orange Man very, very bad, or Orange Man very, very good, and and I don't know if I necessarily align with either of those perspectives, and so that's where we start to get into more nuanced thought and the ability to arrive at your own center, which isn't really being controlled by either dominant polarity, is important from my perspective. So we also talk about how to recognize in the class, sorry, just to kind of we talk about how to recognize how to kind of cipher which thoughts that you have are your own. Which, I mean, honestly, I'm going to go so far as to say that very few thoughts are our own.
Yeah.
One way or another, right? And we get into sort of what could possibly, whose thoughts could they be? And
interesting. Yeah. Mystery.
Yeah. And then we also process our experience of the education system, because that's kind of where, whether you want to say the indoctrination or the learning starts, and it tends to be very mechanical. It also kind of stomps out nuance, creativity, imagination, consciousness, these things, right? Very young. And so we process that together and sort of talk about our experiences in that space. And yeah, and then can I move on? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay. And then we talk about Cancer, the sign, and how so the water signs, when we go through the water signs in this class, that's where we start to talk about the energetic components of this realm and reality. So we look at the energetic field and, sort of different things with each water sign that could be impairing or impacting your energetic field, and how to make reparations in your field. So with that, we talk about inner mother and your relationship to your actual mother, and how that can sometimes set the tone for how you manage and process emotions. We talk about how to recognize foreign emotions and how to clear foreign energy and foreign emotions, and sitting with the inner child and that kind of thing. And
no, that's amazing, and that's powerful. It's so necessary. I feel even right now. I mean, I even think emotions and like Cancer and water. I mean, it goes back to even this whole mind control. It's like I even sometimes feel that. I think I even said this in a post recently too. It's like it makes me wonder how many of our emotions have been programmed, into us too, that
right.
we think they're our own, but it's because of handling, there's so many different things, right? Like over time, right? That
Yeah.
make a
Now we're getting
difference.
into it.
Yeah,
Oh
so
yeah, for
mhm.
sure. Yeah. I think like, gosh, I mean, there's so many different components to like emotional dynamics and stuff like that. And it's not like we are in this incredibly emotionally intelligent, society at this point, right? We've been in are you familiar with, I think it's Ahriman spirit? It's like the opposite of like, it's the physical, maybe it's like a demon, maybe it's like an egregore, whatever, but it's like a very physicalist sort of like all there is just what I can see, what I can measure, what I can observe, and
Oh
it's sort
no,
of like
interesting.
an energy that really benefits from, us being in that space. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so definitely like there's a lot of different components to emotions. I mean, so one thing that I like to say, and I'll just share this with your audience, if you don't mind, like, is if your emotion is so loud that like you can't, kind of like turn it off, come back to it later to process, like, because I think that is important, is to sit with and to
Yeah,
feel and to hold space for. But if
absolutely.
your emotion is so loud that you can't even like recognize that, like, you know, like, if you're in a frenzy, even if it's a good frenzy, there's a chance that that's like not your feeling, that that's not your emotion, that that's not yours. So
Interesting.
I
It's a
give
good way to
lots of
distinguish it, though. It's a good, it's like what I hear in that is if it literally is taking over you, like
Mhm.
if you feel like you have no, like it literally, the emotion has completely consumed you. Like you said, whether you're in joy and ecstasy or whether you're in rage,
bliss.
Yeah, 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 for
Right.
sure. Yeah, it's interesting.
Absolutely. And so then we get into Leo.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But
I'm rising Leo, so I get it. I love Leo. Yeah.
I think we have a lot of good synastry between us, I think. So, but yeah, when we get into Leo, we get into the heart and the backbone and sort of like how you can strengthen those on all levels and sort of like move with discernment, in your heart space and your backbone and both, yes, and your own like sort of divinity that I think rests in the heart space, and that you can sort of like that in some ways. Have you seen the movie Jupiter Ascending?
I've seen parts of it, but I have not seen the whole thing.
So the royal heir to Earth, in this movie, where they show the human farm, the factory farm of humans, like it's the best disclosure movie ever. Like you have to watch it if you want to,
I'm
but
gonna
like,
have to watch it tonight then, the whole thing. Yeah.
but so there's this, this main character in Jupiter Ascending is like, she's like a toilet scrubber, right? She's like a maid, but in her consciousness and she's like the heir to the earth, basically. And it's interesting. It's funny to me, like,
Yeah.
so I think that, the people that are, sort of like at the top of the pyramid, if you want to call it that, are like actually, if you want, whether you want to call it jealous or whatever, of the, natural sort of imagination and creativity that comes with having a human soul experience. And so we talk about that.
Nice.
And kind of touch on the inner child as well with Leo, sort of, Cancer, we talk about like the wounded inner child and how to retrieve her and like, or him or them or whatever. And then with Leo, we talk more about like the divine inner child, you know, sort of how like, I don't know if you ever take like psilocybin or whatever, but if you ever do, there's like this sort of like, you know, things are more saturated and, you know, more colorful, more joyous, more light, you know, so we talk about that and
play, right?
Right, exactly.
It's our creative life force energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we talk about Virgo. So we get into like food, you know, circadian rhythm cycles and, you know, and cycles and seasons in general, like, you know, and sort of like operating with, you know, the cycles and seasons of nature. So, you know, if you are like, you know, a woman, then you have like a menstrual cycle and what that kind of looks like in, you know, and how you can sort of structure your life around this phase that you're at, you know, in your cycle. So we talk about that a little bit and, you know, how you can like really optimize with the seasons and how, you know, we talk a little bit about service to others as well. And, you know, I think one thing that's really interesting right now in the field or in the collective consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is like there is this like, we are all in this together. And like suddenly everybody's like a humanitarian, you know, but like nobody has done it. Well, not nobody, because there are people, but like there's a reason why Aries through Leo is all about the self, you know, because you have to have like a really good understanding of who you are, your own value, your own divinity before you're like, we're all in this together. And, you know,
absolutely.
I think, so Libra, we talk about like, you know, leisure, creativity as well. We talk about relationship dynamics, attachment styles, things of that nature. With Scorpio, it's like part 2 of the energetic field. So we talk about like, you know, kind of like how to do like a soul retrieval with yourself and how to retrieve aspects of yourself. And we talk about entities and, you know, principalities and how to break agreements with those kinds of beings, like how to recognize that there's something else in your etheric space that's sort of like siphoning force energy.
Absolutely.
You know,
it's so important though. It really is. It's so necessary. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And it's something that like, you know, when I went through like a really, really big phase of struggle with that kind of energy and like kind of like feeling kind of like helpless. Like, I don't know exactly how to clear something like this, or like, why me? Like, why is it me that's getting messed with and everybody else seems to be fine, you know? And I went through this phase when I was in a relationship with someone who like refused to have that conversation and to hold space for me, and kind of just like insisted, that's a handler right there, like insisted that, you know, nothing was going on and that nothing was there, when like I knew that I was not alone in my energetic space, you know, and kind of like how to like not shell out like hundreds and hundreds of dollars on healers to do it for you, when you can just sort of like patch the wound that tells you that, you know, we have a lot of violation trauma. And I think that that's something that, you know, these beings sort of hook into. And and we talk about the energetic dynamics of sex and like what really happens like when you are intimate with someone, and how like the only, you know, like you can go to the depths of yourself and you can be really intimate with yourself. And I think that's a precursor to finding intimacy and communion with someone else. Do you want me to keep going? I'm sorry, I feel like this is turning into a long thing. Okay, so then we talk about Sagittarius, which is like the belief structure and systems, and sort of like how to recognize that because I mean, I don't know, I think especially in the spiritual community, like ever since like Pluto was like in Sagittarius, like over the last, you know, several years before it went into Capricorn in 2008, it just kind of started off this like precedent of like people externalizing their power to various gurus or teachers or beings, right? When even if like you have like a mediumistic connection to a being and you trust them, you know, we talk about how to like read frequency signatures of different beings to sort of see if they're, you know, if it's not just like a holographic insert, or if it is really, you know, the being that they proclaim themselves to be. We talk about how to test the spirits, you know.
Absolutely. I remember hearing about this, like, actually, I think I was in the church. This is years ago. And it was like, you
one
know,
of the gems.
People get visitations from different, you know, beings. And even like some people would say even from, you know, Jesus himself. And like, I remember like I had teachers at the time that would say like, listen, like you need to make sure that that's actually, that there's tricksters too, you know, like that you need to make sure that there's, you know, there's not any kind of manipulation in there as well too. And like our emotional state though, right? If we're so attached, we're going to be like, oh yay. And like, we're, you know, just so to be really cautious of that and test all of that. I think that's
the spirits. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's like a gem from like the Christian sort of ideology and faith, right? Is to sort of like discernment. And so we also look at like, like, you know, making sure that your beliefs are yours, you know, sort of like navigating the space of, I don't know, like not all those who wander are lost kind of vibes. And, you know, we also deconstruct the academic industrial complex a little bit in terms of, you know, because I mean, a lot of that kind of energy that's put forth in academic institutions is also something that is sort of like taking us away from ourselves and, you know.
Totally.
So then we talk about Capricorn, we get into the straw man concept, the like, you are not your straw man. I don't know if we've talked about that a little bit, like the birth certificate bonds and all that kind of thing. And how like, you know, just like kind of we get into like the farm basically and like the human slavery.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you don't know what straw man is, just look it up.
Well, I mean, I can also describe it too. Like your straw man is like so when you're born, you're given a birth certificate, and that is something that as soon as you have a birth certificate, you have like a tax ID, you have a social security number, right? And these things are, I kind of, you know, they're meant to be constraints upon the soul. And so I, you know, just remind you that like you are not your straw man in that class. And we, you know, sort of deconstruct a little bit deeper the Babylonian money system and, you know, fiat currency and all that stuff. And we talk about inner father and inner authority and boundaries and like how to like navigate both like the energetic and the spiritual, but also the worldly. And, you know, is it possible to have like a meaningful, comfortable life while being awake and aware, you know? And then I have 2 more signs left, so almost done with this aspect of it, but we talk about in Aquarius, like the difference between the ideal optimal collective consciousness and the hive mind, you know, and we also look at like friendship dynamics. I know a lot of people in my life, and I have this, and, you know, it's sort of like friendship issues and betrayals where like human relationships, even before this like period of forced isolation, you know, has been kind of like targeted or sieged, right? So we talk about that a little bit and, you know, communicating expectations with friends and that kind of thing. And we also talk about Nikola Tesla and Dr. Reich and how, you know, kind of like a case study on them as like the optimal Aquarius archetype, sort of the frequency masters, right? You know that you're a frequency master.
Yeah.
And then we talk about Pisces, so like dream work, you know, connection to the infinite expanse of all that is. And, you know, some tips that I've found to be helpful for lucid dreaming, and also, you know, how to unplug from the collective unconscious, because that can be really like, you know, to be a collective empath, which I guess like Pisces is, which I feel like I've really had to like, I've had my grips with that, is like, yeah, just like making sure that you are able to, no matter what's going on with the collective, that you're able to thrive and to heal and like to progress as a multidimensional being, which is also what we get into with Pisces. And that's it. Good enough.
I love that.
That's a wrap.
I love that. I mean, because it's with Pisces too, 12th house, you know, it's like, I have Venus and I can't even think today right now. Like, I'm like,
I know, I just went through so much. Like,
I have Saturn and Venus conjunct in my 12th house at 15 and 17 degrees, and I have Cancer, you know, Cancer is my 12th house, but yeah, it's an interesting house. Like, I, for so long, like, thought like, I'm like, I don't understand this because it's in the frickin' unconscious, you know? And
right.
And
Totally.
so it's, you know, it's an interesting house, very psychic, you know, very ethereal realm, you know, and I have some clients that have Sun in their 12th, and it's very interesting placement, you know, for that. So, hey, this is Erin Esser, and I really hope that you are enjoying the show. I wanted to ask you this question. Imagine what your life could be like if you knew your purpose. I work with astrology and human design as tools of activating your life. I'm able to pinpoint specifically where in your life are your challenges and limitations, and then also be able to pinpoint where your dharma is, where your freedom is, where your liberation is, what your purpose is in this lifetime. For more information on my karma to dharma readings that dramatically shift people's lives, head to my website, erinesser.com, or you'll find the link below. Now back to the show. Yeah.
Definitely tricky. Like, I feel like the 12th house people are like the mirrors, and like you have to be like really good at like identifying like what is being projected onto the mirror and like what's actually yours. You know, with any Pisces, any 12th house energy, it's something that comes up. 8th house energy too, but not nearly as much, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
you know, it's interesting though, like you brought up like the difference, you know, since we just kind of entered into this whole Aquarius, you know, I'd like to take just a few minutes. I know, like, maybe to talk about that a little bit. I know people are interested in like, what does this mean? Like, to be in this like age of Aquarius, and like, you know, and the difference, right? And I would like to hear more about, like you said, the hive mind versus, you know, like the conscious, you know, collective. And I kind of view it, and I would like to, you know, hear what you have to say about this too, is it's like how I'm feeling into this energy is, it's about, for me, it's how am I going to express my own individualism for the benefit of the collective, but not for the sake of the collective.
right.
And that's kind of how I, you know, and there's a fine line between that, right? Like, and am I giving up my freedom, my sovereignty, my individual expression for the collective, or am I finding it and embodying it for the benefit to be a giver? It's like and it's the water bearer, right? Too. So I see it's like this beautiful energy of like trying to help, trying to serve, but it's like you're either going to get it or you're not, because they're not going to go back, you know, like this.
Yeah.
Like, so anyway, I would love to hear kind of like what you'd have to say about that, and then just kind of how you see it as well too.
Yeah. So, gosh, I mean, I feel like since I've been looking into astrology and like the various like metaphysical sort of ideas and topics, I knew all my life that I was going to come in to witness like some kind of shift, like a big shift, like of consciousness. And so, you know, Aquarius really has two sides. Okay. So like, you know, there's the side of like artificial intelligence, and there's the side of like, on this side, it's like mad science experiments and like, you know, Frankensteinian kind of science, right? And, you know, sort of like science being like the new religion, right? And on this side, it is sort of like an individualist collective or like a bunch of people coming together to share their truth. And, you know, another thing that's been like long prophesied is like the Great Divide. And, you know, I do think that we are witnessing that right now is like sort of this divide, and both sides of the polarity think that the other is wrong and that this and that, right?
Yeah.
But I think that there is like one aspect of this that I really like would like to just touch on, and it's not for people, but it is sort of like, you know, important that we touch on. There's this sort of like agenda, I think, to, you know, hook people up to like an actual virtual hive-minded reality system, and, you know, to sort of like fully cement, right? Because I mean, if you look at, and this isn't in the history books, so, you know, whatever, but if you look at like human evolution, we've been quarantined to this planet, to this realm and reality for so long. Yeah. And I think that the time is actually up, like to, like, we are ready to like, you know, expand out of this, you know, quarantine phase, which we can do so naturally. We do not require any technology. We just require our consciousness to be able to like be multiple places at once. Mm-hmm. We are the stargates. We are the portals, you know, to the other realms and the other dimensions and all that shit, right? So there's this side that really wants to further cement, you know, to sort of suck the soul out of humanity, for lack of a better term, and to really like merge us with machines. I mean, people could say that this is like a conspiracy theory, but Ray Kurzweil, you know, prophesied, you know, false prophet, right? Like prophesied that he would do that by 2030. And that would be like the sort of like, you know, singularity of like, you know, merging humans with artificial intelligence, right? So that's something that has supposedly been in the works since I was a kid, right? Mm-hmm. You know, with the various things that go in our food, water, air.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. So this is just something that we have to be aware of so that we can say no, because this is like really cementing that sort of physicalist material, and takes away the soul and the expansion of consciousness, right? So on this side, there is like the truth of this realm coming out, and there are all over the place, even since 2021 began, but especially too in 2020, certain things were being exposed for what they really were. Like, I think a lot of the things that like were said to happen, like Bill Gates blocking out the sun, or like, I think a lot of those things already actually happened. And, you know, now like this is sort of like, it's like reverse disclosure in a way. And I think we're moving, I think for those of us who value more creation, nature, our spirit, right? Like that we are on this trajectory of like, I mean, it's totally uncertain, totally unknown. And like, nobody knows what it's going to look like until we get there. But I'm ready, you know, like to experience too, like the singularity of consciousness, where time in essence dissolves as a construct, and we're able to be with all of ourselves all at the same time, experiencing the ever unfolding now moment. So
well, I love that. And, you know, and even just bringing that back into the integration, right, of the parts of ourselves using astrology to be able to do that. Like they're different parts of our psyche, you know, so it's like, and I feel like that is even part of the desire that, you know, over the years of even healing, this aspect of healing and inner child, and the, you know, we've touched on the, you know, there's pieces of ourselves that are fragmented. And I mean, if you're a human being, you're fragmented. It's just how it is, you know, and like, and it's okay. And like this desire, I think, to come back home in a sense, come back to ourselves, is this singularity, but in most purest way, right? And just even like coming into the shadow to the light and the spectrum, we're merging with AI, merging with machines, merging with that is more the shadow aspect of this versus this natural, true healing, organic method of doing this. And like you're saying, this is the power that we really have within us to be able to do these things. It comes back to this life force energy. And are
Right.
we going to view that as sacred and truly holy, or are we just going to give it away?
Yeah. And, and that's the thing too. Like, I noticed a lot of people stressing, gotta wake everybody up, gotta wake everybody up. Nope, you are just accountable for yourself. That's it. Like,
I don't want that fucking karma too. I was thinking about that. I'm like, you know what? What's mine and what's yours? Like all I can do, like we're doing, like, we're teaching, we can teach, but it's not their salvation, whatever we want to call it, right there. That's like everybody else's, that's their thing. Like I have this, my soul is my soul, my spirit, my energy is mine. And it's like, here's where I am, here's where you are, here's where, other people are. And we have to own ourselves in that process. And if we start to tread on that and cross that boundary, we're messing with some shit that I don't want to mess with,
Absolutely. And I think too, like, there is this sort of like, I don't know, it's like this idea, that like, that I had the other day that like, what if, I don't know, like, what if the choice has already been chosen and like whatever we're expressing now is sort of like the side of the bifurcation process that we're on, like what if, what if we've been working toward that for the last several years, right? Like where, like for the last 10 years or so, I know that for me, it's felt like every day is a different past life. And like, oh my God, I'm in the washing machine of growth all the fucking time.
Yeah.
I can't help but think that it's just that kind of like both acceleration and deceleration, and that like, I do think that like as we progress into 2021 with the North Node in Gemini, that like the polarity will grow stronger, unfortunately. But I also like, I don't know. I mean, I'm eternally optimistic and, do have sort of like faith in sort of, because I know faith can also be like blind faith, right? Sure. I have faith that like what we're going through right now is like the unveiling process, and like people are going to deal with that however they're going to deal with that, right? And that maybe the good stuff is right around the corner. Because one thing that I've considered, I've talked to a lot of biblical people, Christians, right, in the last few months, especially, right, because there's all these like revelation signs everywhere and all this stuff, right? And it's like, what if like we have been going through the tribulations for our whole lives? It's not been easy. This life has not been easy.
Yeah.
From my perspective. I mean, I can only speak for myself, right? But
well, yeah, no, I hear you. I think that a lot of people would, I mean, if we're really honest about it, right? I was in a seminar and Dr. Gabor Mate, like he was talking about like 60% of people are on medicine, for some mood regulating type of med. So in 60% of our society, of our culture, that tells me that is not able to truly navigate through this world on their own, and they're needing some type of assistance. It's the majority of people that are living right now, and whether that's anxiety, depression, whatever it is, and so like this culture we live in is I mean there's
inherently fragmenting,
but
that's the thing. I mean, we don't have to like, we can be in the world, but not of the world. Like, we don't have to be like a part of it, And that's one thing that I recognized was like, I guess in 2018, when I finally quit my my big girl job, I was like, I just like cannot work for someone else. And my boss at the time was awesome. So it's not,
Yeah.
but just, I think like, if you're listening to this and you're on the fence about entrepreneurship and, exploring like what you have to offer, yeah, I would say that this is a good time to, really like be smart about it, but to discover like your own talents and how you can bring that to like-minded community, because that's another thing about this year. Even though we're all supposed to be isolated, I don't know if I do the best job of isolating, but like, it's all about relationships this year, because the triplicity for the first time in hundreds of years has shifted to air. So with the Saturn Jupiter conjunction, right? So it's all about relationships and human innovation, not top-down innovation. That's not what I'm talking about. Fuck out of here. But
yeah. No, I hear you. Definitely. And I think that it's actually like part of what's happening right now. It's forcing people to think of things differently. We have to show up and do things differently right now. And if we're going to survive 2021, I really feel like we've got to, it is innovation, and it's within us that's going to come,
right.
going to come from us out, rather than, like you're saying, top down. And and it correlates to so many other things, that so many other prophecies, even human design, at the cross of the sleeping phoenix, and, coming in 2027. And I mean, there's so many things. And, even then gosh, we could even go into like the Pluto return, right? I mean, America, we're coming into that. Like, there's so much stuff. And that's one of the things I love about astrology is that, like this whole conversation is really like, yeah, like obviously like there are some little detours in this, but it's all comes back. It's all like this, there's signs. I mean, there's always signs. And even the Bible talks about that. Other like, scripture books talk about like, it's like noticing the signs, the seasons that we're in, what season are we in right now, and paying attention to that. I'm getting chills actually like talking about it, but we will know the season that we're in and be confident in that. And if we're not shifting with those seasons, we're going to get caught off guard. And that is where the struggle, that's really where the real struggle is the attachment to the old, the attachment to, this just came like through me right now. This is in the Bible, but like, we can't put new wine in old wineskins, And so it's like, how are we shifting? How are we almost rebirthing ourselves, for the 8th house stuff, Scorpio stuff, like how are we rebirthing our own selves to be able to hold what is coming in and all of that too. So there's just,
because I mean, that's the thing too about like the Gemini North Node and like the square to Neptune is like, and also like, I really like also don't want to induce fear in people in saying this, right? Like, because I do think that like this maybe has like a slightly different meaning, to what like science has like sort of instilled in us that it does, right? But like, so the magnetosphere and the ionospheres, so supposedly the protection that we have over the Earth is like 25% weaker than it was at the very beginning of the year.
Wow.
So,
yeah,
like, and to me, like, I guess this is where, like, I kind of get into sort of like more nuanced thought, because, like, I can remember, like, waking up in 2012 and being like, wow, I feel like I'm in a new universe, or like, waking up in like 2000 and being like, wow, I'm in a new universe. And, even though I was like 8, but definitely like there was like the .com thing that happened around that time, right? And like, who's to say that we haven't already been sort of like reinserted into new variations of the holographic system, right? So who's to say that who's to say that we'll be impacted by any of it, right? But like, the magnetosphere is weakening. I think that personally, it seems as though the old guard or the old architect of this matrix is sort of like losing power, because to me now it seems like all cards are on the table. you know, and like all like they are, whether you want to say the control structure, like whatever, it's really showing its hand right now. And it's saying like, you know, which way, and everybody has a choice, even though it seems like a non-choice, right? And I think that, you know, I don't know, I think that this is a really, really good time. And I'll say this like several times until I'm blue in the face. Like, imagine what kind of universe you want to be in. That's where going within, making yourself whole, that's like, you have to imagine, like, for me, I know like my ideal space reality is like living in a circular structure that like doesn't even exist yet, because like I've seen it in some of my memories from like outside of the construct, but like, you know, humans are like, you know, sort of an organic sort of being, right? Creator beings, right? It's like, if you look at like a square, you know, and a circle, like which takes more energy? And that's like the difference between sort of like a closed source system and an open source system, right? So like I'm living in a circular, like kind of enclave, if you want to call it that, right? There's free energy, and people come to my house, this enclave, whatever, and like I do sound healing, and I just spend time in communion with nature, and I can go wherever the fuck I want to go in all of the galaxies. And it's a matter of like, I don't think space is necessarily what we think it is, right? Like I think it, you know, space could be just right here, you know, it doesn't have to be all the way out there. It could be in here or right here, you know. And so kind of just like, you know, where I'm able to go wherever I want to go, sort of like passing through both time and space, using my consciousness and naturally, and having my hands also simultaneously in the dirt, you know, and really being able to play with energy unbridled and unsuppressed, and being able to sing all of the time, like, and play every instrument that I want to play that exists under the sun, right? So those are my, like, that's what I want, like, out of my next world.
You know what I hear in that though too is like you know, we're talking about Aquarius, right? And the light and the shadow of that. And like what I see in it doesn't necessarily have to be all shadow, but like this virtual reality, right? Instead of like, you could do the same thing artificially, right? Or within,
yes,
you know?
can, you know, and like I guess like that is sort of like, for me, the distinction is like consumption versus creation. And of course, like no judgment. It's not a judgment. It's just consumption eats itself eventually, you know?
Yeah, it just is what it is. Yeah.
When source or creativity just sort of like is always experiencing itself all of the time. I mean, these are just some of the thoughts that I have that exist in the back of my mind. But
no, I love that, because there's no beginning and no end in that, you know?
Right. It's self-sustaining. It's open source. So
yes, I love that.
And
oh my gosh.
Also, like, what?
I love that. Like that's a clear distinction, you know, between the two. And I love that. So I do.
Me too. Thank you so much for, I don't know, just like starting this conversation and having me. And it's really, really good to talk to you about all this stuff. So
absolutely. Well, you know, like I think that we've covered quite a bit in this, and I love it. And I would love to be able to, we can do it again too sometime, you know, and just kind of do energetic updates or something like that, you know.
Love to do that. Yeah, maybe we can do one for the astrology of 2021 or whatever. Can I ding this?
Absolutely.
Feels good.
I have a couple tuning forks as well. I have one that's 528 hertz. And then an angel one. It's like super, like, I don't know, like 10,000 or 11,000 something, or 20.
Like really high frequency.
Super high frequency.
That's fun. I have like a set for all of the major organs, and they have various different hertzes, but that's another thing too that I have in like on my imagination board, if you want to call it that, is like really like packing the house with like sound healing instruments and being able to use my voice in that way too. Because I think that, you know, toning and singing and stuff like that is really important for me, I think, and other people.
It's so important. And I mean, it regulates the nervous system. I mean, it can dysregulate it or regulate it. It's how we use it. It's like anything, right? Like everything can be a tool.
Everything can be a tool. Just don't be the tool.
Just don't be the tool. That's right. Well, thank you so much, Meredith. Let's do another one here soon. And thank you for being on. I really appreciate it. And I loved our talk today. And
me too.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yay. Oh, my website, if you'd like to get in touch with me for a reading, is meredithsluckystars.net. And if you would like to sign up for my class, I have one spot left right now, but I might do another one in March. And it's meredithsluckystars@gmail.com is my email. And I'm sure it'll be in whatever show notes.
Yes, we'll have it in the show notes too. I'm so sorry we got talking about all this.
No,
and I forgot to ask you that. So yeah, it'll be in the show notes as well too. And so what did you say? Your class starts on January 26th?
Oh, 24th. It's a Sunday. Sunday at 11. We'll have Astrology Church. I'm just kidding.
I love Astrology Church. I love it. Anything that brings in self-awareness is church, you know? So thank you so much, Meredith.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on today's show. To learn more about Activate Your Life podcast and my YouTube channel, just go to erinesser.com. Download the free gift at erinesser.com/healthy-boundaries. That is all for now. We'll see you next week.